ISUPK.
And we want to bring a topic today. We want to talk about with our people that is something that is plaguing the Black, Hispanic, and Native American community. And it's a very thing you see prevalent in the news today that's happening so often, especially with this Tekashi 6ix9ine case that's very popular. But it is not isolated or limited to him specifically. The problem that we're having is, number one, the Lord gave Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, the Most High gave us instructions on how we are supposed to live our life. And one of the most important instructions that he got was to never take the customs and the cultures of another nation, another race of people. Here, America glamorizes the lifestyle of a criminal, of a gangster, of a murderer, of a shooter. That is American culture. To have a problem, to solve your problems, the revolver, the peacemaker, the Colt, the 1911, the Ruger, the Mac, that is American culture. To go and grab a gun and be a murderer, to steal, to rob, to terrorize, to pillage, to murder, to rape, that is American culture. It is the culture of our slave master. It is the culture of Andrew Jackson that murdered North American Indians to steal this land. It is the culture of all of the founding fathers, Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, John Jay, you understand, Thomas Jefferson. It is the culture of George Washington, Benjamin Franklin. It is the culture of this nation of people that put black people in slavery. It is their culture to be a murderer. And Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, because of Martin Luther King and these Christian preachers, they have taught us to love the culture of the European, of the so-called white man. And their culture is to be a criminal, to love the culture of the mafia, of being a gangster, of being an extortioner, a robber, a murderer. That was never a culture that the Lord allowed our people to have. Our people were made to be righteous and honorable and warriors, you understand, for the Lord, not criminals and murderers following behind the society of the people that put us in slavery, man. We want to get this first scripture and open up and show in the Bible, man. If you a brother or you a sister and you done got caught up following behind in this gang lifestyle, this gangster lifestyle, this shooter's lifestyle, you in a gang, you could be any city and state, man. The I.S.U.P.K is here to show our people the way that the Lord said to give us power the correct way. You understand? Being a robber and a murderer and terrorizing your people, that is not our culture, man. At the end of all of the drug dealing and murder, we only hurting our own people, our own families, our own communities, our sons and daughters, man. We're going to get into this story. Give me the Proverbs 3:31. Let's open this Bible and see what the Lord says, man. Read that.
Proverbs chapter 3, verse 31. Envy thou not the oppressor.
What did the Lord say?
Envy thou not the oppressor.
Who is the oppressor of our people? Donald Trump is the oppressor of our people if you are so-called black or Hispanic or Native American. George Washington, the founding fathers, you understand, the pilgrims that arrived to the shores of North America. Those are the oppressors of the North American Indian and those children, you understand? Who's the oppressor if you were an Aztec or a Mayan in Mexico, Central and South America? Francisco Pizarro, a conquistador from Portugal, you understand? Our slave masters, you understand? Rafael Trujillo in the Dominican Republic. Bartolomeo de las Casas, you understand? Conquistadors from Spain. Or Andrew Jackson, Benjamin Franklin. Pilgrims, Jesuits, Quakers that landed in Plymouth Rock, you understand? Today are your Donald Trumps. They're your Mike Pence. They're your Lindsey Grahams. Your John McCains, you understand? They're Amber Guyver, you understand? Who comes into the house of a black man in his house, murders him, and then the black judge and the black bailiff hug a convicted murderer and struck her hair in the courtroom. We're going to go through a list here of blacks and Hispanics that's been convicted of murder that never got a hug from a judge. Nobody stroked their braids or combed their afro in the courtroom. The judge didn't come and give blacks, Hispanics, or Native Americans hugs because the oppressor is who is loved in this kingdom. And the Lord is telling us to not take the culture of our oppressor. And if you are a gang member, if you are a murderer, if you are a shooter, you stealing cars and selling dope and heroin, you have taken on the culture of our oppressor. The Lord said, read it again.
Envy thou not the oppressor.
What does it mean to envy? You understand? In the I.S.U.P.K, we teach the Bible, line upon line, precept upon precept. The word envy means that you desire to be like this. We desire to pattern our lives after our slave master. Pattern our lives after John Gotti. Black people love John Gotti. The mafia despised black people. If you watch The Godfather, which most black people have watched, everybody loves this movie. Most people do. There's a scene in the movie when they start talking about distributing heroin. They said, give it to the blacks. They are animals anyway. Let them lose their souls and destroy themselves, man. It was a government campaign with Ronald Reagan that Reverend Al Sharpton was in on, who's a federal FBI agent, to work with the government and the mafia to make sure that crack cocaine and heroin was distributed into every black major city in the United States. That's how it got to Hampton. That's how it got to Richmond. That's how it ended up in Portsmouth, and Alexandria, and Arlington, and Baltimore, and Washington, D.C., and New York, and New Jersey, and Detroit. It was a government campaign to flood our communities with heroin and crack and weed to get our people destroyed. You understand? And America exploits the desire of our people to want to be respected. If you a black man, you a young Hispanic or black man, you feel disrespected every day of your life. You understand? You feel disrespected by not having a father, by our families being destroyed. You understand? By the neighborhood being plagued and filled with poverty, by the danger and the violence and the suffering in Haiti, or in Trinidad, or in Puerto Rico, or in Dominican Republic, or El Salvador, Guatemala, Mexico, or the inner cities, or Atlanta, or Memphis, or Detroit, or Norfolk, or Hampton. You feel small and disregarded, you understand? Because for 400 years, our people have been allowed to be murdered and victimized, assaulted, abused, enslaved, and no one has called for justice for the crimes that has happened to our people. So much so that rather than actually seek assistance in most cases of our people, we would rather just sweep it under the rug. That's why there's so much drug addiction in the black community, because we don't get justice for crimes that's happened against us. For being molested as a child by some uncle or some preacher or Bill Cosby or the boxing coach, so that you can go fight in the Olympics for America like it was done to Sugar Ray Leonard, like was done to Mike Tyson. You understand? Or so you can get a record career like it was done to B2K. Them young brothers, man. And it lead our people to horrible drug addictions, horrible crimes, you understand? All kind of problems that we have, because there is no one to fight to make sure that you are not feeling small and discarded. You understand? Which is the state of the life of our people. And the reason why is because the Christian church has stolen what God intended for our people, which is not to have a church and a choir, but to have an army and a government of righteous men of war, which is what you see in the I.S.U.P.K under commanding General Yahanna, that will not allow you to be abused and discarded and thrown away. You understand? Just because you're poor, or you're in the ghetto, or you're in the barrio, or your reservation, or because our slave master calls you an illegal, even though they murdered so-called Mexicans to steal Texas, California, and Arizona and call it America after they murdered the North American Indians to steal the rest of this land, man. Our people are in a constant state of depression because we can't get justice for crimes that happen to our people. But in our poverty and our suffering, we have not been taught how to properly respond. You understand? Read that again.
Envy thou not the oppressor.
God doesn't want you to turn to take on the culture of the murderers that are around you. Read, keep going.
And choose none of his ways.
Being a murderer, what did the Lord say?
Choose none of his ways.
Being a stick-up kid, what did the Lord say?
Choose none of his ways.
Murder somebody, throw their body in the trunk of the car, what?
Choose none of his ways.
Get your knife and run through the city, stabbing and hacking people up.
Choose none of his ways.
Being a drug dealer, being a pimp. Read on.
Choose none of his ways.
Being a child molester, being a Christian, being a Democrat, being a Republican, voting. What did the Lord say?
Choose none of his ways.
All of the ways that we have chosen, you may not realize this, but because of the choices that we have made to take on the culture of our slave master, that is a direct result to all of the crime and suffering in our neighborhoods and communities, man. Tekashi 6ix9ine is a big story in the news, but he's not isolated. Our people have been lured into the glamour of being recognized as the hitter, as the shooter, as the murderer, as the top don, as the boss of bosses, the kingpin. All of those things are terms for the white man, our slave master, our oppressor, who is waiting for the opportunity to throw millions of blacks and Hispanics and Native Americans in prison once we buy into his system of being a criminal, man. That criminal, mobster, murderer, gangster lifestyle is not made for our people, man. Our slave master used that lifestyle and got the United States of America. When we take on that lifestyle, all we do is destroy our own cities and communities and leave them in a much more advantageous condition for other nations of people to come and buy our properties for dirt cheap prices after everybody flees the ghetto because it's filled with crime and violence, man. That's not the way the Lord intended for us to live our life. And it's not your fault. You understand? You some brothers sitting in prison after you done got a life sentence for a bunch of crimes and things. You were taught to live your life in this manner, man. We was never taught how to live according to the way that the Lord set up in these scriptures. We was taught to live the life the way that our slave master taught us, which is to be a criminal, because that's his culture. That's their culture that we've taken on. It's time for us to turn back to our culture. Keep reading. Is there any more on that? All right. Give me that next scripture that I asked for.
Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 54.
Uh-huh.
So that the man that is tender among you.
The man that is tender among you. What is a tender man? Meaning he's not a full size, you understand? He's a young man. He's still tender. You understand? He's not fully old and gray and fully grown and everything. He's still tender. He's got growing to do. You understand? He's young. Maybe a teenager. Maybe in his early 20s or something, man. His whole thought process and patterns and everything have not been fully developed. He's still finding his footing in life, still growing, still learning, still stumbling, still making mistakes. You understand? Because none of our people have the benefit of this truth, which is why we're here to present it to you. The benefit of having righteous and honorable men of the Lord that can show our people the proper way that we are supposed to live in the ghetto. You understand? In poverty, in crime-stricken and infested neighborhoods, man. Not to turn to the culture of our oppressor and go and be like a murderer, but to turn to the culture of our forefathers and to do what our ancestors did when we were faced with adversity and suffering, man. Keep reading.
And very delicate.
Very delicate. Young man, teenager, 14, 15, 19, 21, 22. The eye of the young man, keep going.
His eye shall be evil toward his brother.
He, a young Hispanic man, he gonna see another Hispanic man. And what did the Lord say?
His eye shall be evil toward his brother.
This is Hispanic on Hispanic violence. What did the Lord say?
His eye shall be evil toward his brother.
You're going to be a black man in Hampton and Norfolk and Leesburg and Alexandria, and you're going to see another black man. Or you're going to be a black man from Emporia, and you're going to see another black man from Brunswick. You're going to see a black man from a project that's not your project. He's going to be from a side of town that's not your side of town. He's going to be from a block that's not your block. He's going to be from an apartment complex or a high school or a middle school, and it's not your middle school. And what did the Lord say was going to happen?
His eye shall be evil toward his brother.
I don't like them, man. I'm going to rob them. We're going to take their shoes. We're going to punk them. We're going to beat them up every time we see them. We're going to stab them. They're going to go and shoot up their neighborhood, man. We're going to ride around looking for them so that we can be the Godfather, so that we can be the Mafia, so that we can be John Gotti and Sammy the Bull and Big Paul Costello. You hear Rick Ross talking about it all the time. You're a Tekashi 6ix9ine, test my gangster. Come test my gangster. That ain't the culture of our people, man. All of that does is destroy our people. You see how he rose to the height and the fame very quickly, and just like that, him and everybody around him lost everything. Brothers facing 50, 60 years, man. Shooting brothers, robbing brothers, murdering brothers. The Lord say that he despiseth the heart of the proud, man. And it is American culture to be proud of being a criminal. And if you are black, Hispanic, or Native American, we are forbidden from taking on America's culture. Homosexuality is America's culture. Murder is America's culture. Robbery is America's culture. Adultery is America's culture. Being a drug addict, smoking is American culture. Newports, crack, heroin, Molly's, Percocet. Being a drug abuser is America's culture, man. Hating black people is America's culture. Hating Hispanics is America's culture. Despising Native Americans is America's culture. It's the culture of the right wing and the left wing, of the Democrats and the Republicans. In order to love the flag, to salute America, to pledge allegiance to the United States, you have to disregard the entire fact that 99 million so-called black people were murdered during the transatlantic slave trade. To build your Wall Street, they had to sell cotton. They had to sell slaves. To build your insurance companies, you understand? They had to trade commodities. The first commodity on Wall Street was cotton, you understand? It took black slaves being beaten and kidnapped and murdered and tortured to farm cotton to make America rich. Ain't that right, Uraj? To farm the tobacco, you understand? To farm the tea. Our brothers in the West Indian Islands and in Puerto Rico cutting sugar cane to make tea and coffees and cakes for England and the British and the colonists, farming tobacco. Without that, without the slaughter and the genocide of 77 million North American Indians, Native Americans, the Cree, the Seminole, the Wampanoag, you understand? The Cheyenne, Navajo, Shoshone, the Cherokee, the Chata, you understand? The Blackfoot, the Osage, the Sioux, the Oglala, the Lakota, the Pueblo. They had to slaughter hundreds of millions of our people. You understand? If you were so-called Mexican, you were so-called African American, the North American Indians are our people. That's our blood relatives. Not Andrew Jackson. You listening to Ancestry.com for your slave master to take your money and put your DNA in a federal database to try to tie you to crimes while he lied to you and tell you 1% Irish, 5% Ghana, 3% Nigeria. When these people, they lying and telling you that you were part of them, these people don't even deal with each other. We don't even understand the real world because we wrapped up in the ways of our oppressor in his society, which the Lord told us to come out of. You understand? In second Corinthians 6 and 17. So keep reading. Go ahead.
And toward the wife of his bosom.
Start from the top.
So that the man that is tender among you.
This is a young brother. He's tender among you, man. Young brothers all over the neighborhood, everywhere. All in the ghetto, all in the street. Keep going.
And very delicate.
Very delicate, man. He ain't strong. He ain't big yet. He's still growing. He ain't reached his 40s and 50s. He hadn't gained any wisdom to understand how different things in life function, man. Keep going.
His eye shall be evil toward his brother.
He gonna pick up a gun and go and shoot his brother. That's what MS-13 does, man. That's what our brothers and sisters been taught to do in these gangs, man. And it ain't just MS-13. It's Latin Kings, you understand? The Trinitarios, the brother, they hacked and murdered the brother up in New York with machetes, man. Them 6 brothers did that. MS-13 hacking and killing brothers, man. Brothers in gangs and Bloods and Vice Lords and Gangster Disciples and Crips shooting and killing each other all over Hampton Roads, man. I'm gonna read this right here. Stories reading, man. These brothers, these Hispanic brothers, the tribe of Zebulon, in El Salvador, Guatemala, you understand, Central America down there. American culture created that MS-13 in these gangs. All of this oppression and being abused and marginalized and running for their lives in terror from the American government that started all of the civil wars in America, that started all of this racial tension and drug wars, which is the only nature of the beef between so-called blacks and Hispanics. It's all about drug wars and drug territory. If our people were not taking the culture of our slave master and being a drug dealer, we wouldn't have any beef between us. Blacks and Hispanics, we live in the exact same life in every city, every state, every country, man. Struggling to survive, struggling to keep our families together, and our slave master, like Donald Trump, got his foot on the back of all of our necks everywhere we are. Whether it's Britain, England, France, Spain, Portugal, their cultures taught us to be a Catholic, taught us to be a Christian, taught us to disregard the laws, statutes, and commandments of God in the Bible, and that God was on our side no matter what. But the Bible does not say God is on our side no matter what. The Bible tells us we got to keep his laws, statutes, and commandments, or he would kill our people. He would hurt us. He would make sure that we were 2 million in prison if we did not obey the Lord. That our communities would be filled with crime and violence, man. That's why our slave master appeals and wants to promote us to be criminals in the earth, so that they can justify wiping our lives out and throwing our families in dog cages, man. Saying like Donald Trump, they criminals. These Mexicans, they bad dudes. These Puerto Ricans, they come from S-hole countries, you understand? They the same thing they say about the ghetto, about black people, about Baltimore, about Hampton Roads, about Portsmouth, you understand? About bad news in Newport News, man. They use these things to justify dehumanizing our people. It's the same thing they said about the Native Americans. These are godless savages. They don't have any God, you understand? You got to kill the Indian to save the man. Force them to be Christians, man. Like, this is what our people have been taught. And Islam is no different than Christianity. Black people following Islam thanks to Malcolm X. Malcolm X learned it in prison. The brothers in prison learned from Fard Muhammad. Elijah Muhammad learned from Fard Muhammad. Fard Muhammad was a white man. See, we still following the cultures of our slave masters. Brothers and sisters become Muslims and still can't fix the problems in the black community. Still can't stop the dope dealing, the child molestation, the heroin, the gang violence, the murder. None of these things can fix our people. The Arabs are just another slave master. They put us in slavery right along with the so-called white man and the Africans. None of those people, that's not our culture. Our culture is what's in this Bible. The records of our people and our forefathers, man. Not being some gangster with a Tommy gun sticking out the window, loading up the Draco, shooting in the neighborhood. hitting some baby in her house, man. Some sister in Newport News, 16 years old. Bullets shooting through the house, hit some sister getting shot in her living room somewhere, man. Just this past week. Like, this ain't supposed to be our culture. We took this culture on because your Christian preachers never taught you the culture that God commanded us to have, which is why you need the I.S.U.P.K. You don't see how valuable a man of God is until your neighborhood is filled with murder, until our children are being kidnapped and snatched off the street, until child molesters are in charge making laws, you understand, like David Larson, you understand, that's in charge here in Virginia, that's fighting for rights for pedophiles to be able to molest children and it not be a crime. While you supporting the LGBT community, following our slave masters' custom, the LGBT community is working on legislation to legalize pedophilia. You don't know what you're doing, wrapped up in the culture of our slave master. That's why the Lord said, envy thou not the oppressor and choose none of his ways, man. Voting will never fix this problem because we didn't have these problems before we started voting. We dealt with our own problems and we loved each other. Our families were together. We didn't murder each other. We wasn't selling drugs to each other. We wasn't shooting each other in our communities. We were being strong and united with each other. Blacks and Hispanics was together before this silly drug war and this cartel war that the CIA created to divide our people. And the Christian preachers go hand in hand because they refuse to teach our people that God said in the Bible, blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, we one race of people, one nation, one family. We are the lost 12 tribes of the nation of Israel, and we are commanded to obey God's laws, statutes, and commandments. You will never be taught this outside of the I.S.U.P.K. because Commanding General Yahanna is who the Lord set up to lead our nation. You understand? You have to follow the man that the Lord set up. You understand? All right. So what you got there? Read that from the top.
Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 54. So that the man that is tender among you,
a young brother, you understand? Keep going.
And very delicate.
Very delicate. Keep going.
His eye shall be evil toward his brother.
His eye shall be evil, man. Black people don't even talk to each other anymore. Black people walk past each other on a bus, on the train, in the elevator, can't even speak to each other anymore. Talking about vote. What vote on the ballot is going to teach black people to love each other? Black people have been voting for 50 years. And since we got the right to vote, we've been shooting, killing, murdering, raping, robbing, aborting each other, aborting our babies, our families destroyed. That's what the scripture talking about. Keep reading.
And toward the wife of his bosom.
Towards who?
The wife of his bosom.
Towards your woman. Who?
The wife of his bosom.
That black woman that goes with a black man. What?
The wife of his bosom.
That Hispanic woman that go with a Hispanic or black man. What?
The wife of his bosom.
The marriage and the family between so-called black, Hispanic, and Native American men and women. The what?
The wife of his bosom.
Your baby. Your boo. You booed up. What did the Lord say you gonna be?
The wife evil toward his brother and toward the wife of his bosom. And toward the remnant of his children.
What's left over of our children after abortion? What?
Remnant of his children.
What's left after Child Protective Services takes our kids? What?
The remnant of his children.
What's left after Immigration Customs Enforcement puts them in dog cages in prisons all across America? What?
The remnant of his children.
Whoever didn't get killed as a child? What?
The remnant of his children.
Whoever, man. Whoever was surviving. Whoever didn't get kidnapped. Whoever didn't get aborted, whoever didn't get murdered, whoever could survive the onslaught of hell that is life being a black, Hispanic, or Native American child. Whoever's left, what did the Lord say?
The remnant of his children, which he shall leave.
Which he shall leave, man. This is a curse in the Bible from us taking on the culture of our slave masters, man. This is why you're raising children by yourself. This is why you're a single mother. This is why you grew up without your father. This is why you were in the shelter. This is why you were in foster care, child protective services, man. Taking the culture of our slave master, being a Christian, being a Democrat, being a Republican, voting, being a gangster. America glamorizes a lifestyle that teaches our people to go against the Lord. There is an entire world, a society, and culture that you were supposed to be building as a Black, Hispanic, or Native American man that is inside of the government with the priests and prophets, the men of the Lord that God set up, which is only in the I.S.U.P.K. And because you and your forefathers and your parents were not raised to understand this, that the purpose for Christ's coming was to build a government, an army, to lead, direct, correct, protect, heal, restore, and educate all Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, that we are God's chosen people, and the culture that we are supposed to take is to keep God's law, statutes, and commandments and obey the Lord, and not be Christians and Muslims and Democrats and Republicans and atheists and Rastas. We are supposed to turn back to the Lord. You were not properly educated that this is where you're supposed to learn how to live life properly. And because of it, you became a drug dealer. You became a murderer. You became a prostitute. You became a stripper. You ended up being a single mother. You ended up having abortions. You ended up committing a murder, shooting another black man, murdering a black man, sisters killing and hating each other, man. You ended up going to church to learn about God from men that the Lord didn't appoint, and they molested our children, man. Like Eddie Long, like these popes and these pastors that get busted every week. That is a gangster's lifestyle. All of that kidnapping and robbing and murdering and child molestation and drug addiction and snorting coke and shooting up and selling dope and terrorizing the neighborhood and extortion and robbery. All of that is the culture of this nation of criminals that enslaved and rules over our people. We are never to take their culture. You understand? I'm going to read some of these stories, man. The Bible said the young man is tender and delicate, man. We got brothers here down in Virginia, man. I'm going to call this out here, man. These are young brothers that's just convicted here in this Hampton Roads area, man, of murders, of shooting, you understand, killings. There was one story, man, where a brother was murdered by this gang. And then they put the brother in the trunk of the car and rode around with the brother's body in the trunk. And then threw him in a ditch somewhere in Chesapeake to be discovered, man. Think of how you would feel if your son, your husband, was somewhere missing for 2 and 3 weeks. And you looking, wondering, where's your father? Where's your daddy? Where's your husband? Where's your brother? Where's your son? Where's your nephew? Where's your uncle? And he's in the trunk of the car because his brother's eyes are evil towards him. They done murdered this brother and riding around with him. Just like Goodfellas. Just like Jimmy Conway and Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci and what's his name? Henry Hill. What was his name? Ray Liotta. Straight out of the movies. Trying to be a white Italian mobster. A murderer. You done this to your own brother, man. A black man who grew up without a father just like you. Poor in the ghetto just like you. Molested as a child just like you. Watched his best friend get killed just like you. Came off the slave ships just like you. Probably raised by a mother by herself just like you. School not being funded. AC not working. Backed up on bills and utilities. Struggling to find a job. Arguing with his woman. Struggling to raise his kids. Living the same life as you, whether it's in English or Spanish. If you black or Spanish. If you in the ghetto or the reservation, man. Living the same life. And you done took your brother's life. For what? So we can be in charge of a city that the state of Virginia gave $30 million to gentrify Norfolk and Newport News. Now that our brother is dead, so that we can rule a city that all of us are now going to be evicted from. This is a game they run on our people, man. We done been sold a lie, Yarash. This ain't our lifestyle, man. This ain't the way we were supposed to live. They run a game on our people, man. Read these stories, man. This brother here, the gang here in Norfolk, Chesapeake, Hampton Roads, Suffolk, convicted of murder, man. One brother got 160 years. Brother 25 years old. Young man. 4 life sentences. 22 years old. 85 years, 29 years old, 45 years. Hispanic brothers in Leesburg, Virginia, murder, robbery, kidnapping, extortion. Brother, 40, 30 years, 22 years old, 23 years old, 14 years old, 24 years old, 20 years old, 21 years old, 23 years old. These is young brothers, man. The hell do you know at 20 years old? 21, 22, 23, a teenager. The hell do you know about life at that age, man? Like, our people is destroying ourselves because we've been taught to take on this culture of being Rambo, of being Die Hard, of being Bruce Willis, you understand, of being Bad Boys, of being the Godfather, of being the Mafia, you understand, of being, you understand, something that the Lord never created our people to be. And it only destroys our people. You understand? It does not stop gentrification. It does not stop us from being homeless. It does not stop drug addiction. It doesn't stop child molestation. It doesn't stop abortion. It doesn't stop murder. It doesn't stop us from being first fired and last hired. It fixes none of the problems in our community. We have to learn to turn back to the Lord, which is why the Lord sent the I.S.U.P.K down here in Virginia, man.
My whole life was trying to find something to follow. Had loyalty, every man tried to borrow. Felt pain and a lot of sorrow. Got betrayed, sold packs, I didn't even have my heart broke. Living confused, about to lose hope. Cops got me on the side of the road like a sideshow. Need an antidote before I croak. Now I'm setting fire to rhythm man blues for this guitar smoke. Rebel with no cause, trying to find direction. The world got me vexed. Picked up a bad liquor habit that's hereditary from oppression. Felt like my life was on fire, trying to find an exit. Now look, 10 G's plus a good record. Sometimes a follower is a soldier, trying to find a good shepherd. Plus when you in hell, how do you excel? Wisdom the breath of life, I believe in fairy tale. Listen well to what I tell. No calling can cause pain, something that a rebel knows very well. Can't you tell I was sent from the Lord? Got a tongue like a two-edged sword.